To ask you this, and it's embarrassing for me to ask you this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Are you a virgin?
How could you ask me that question?
I just want to know. I want to know.
I'm a gentleman.
You're a gentleman.
I'm a gentleman.
There is a specific kind of moment that happens on live television when someone decides, in front of an audience of millions, to underestimate Michael Jackson. They lean into a rude question. They set up a humiliating situation. They assume that because he was quiet, because he was polite, because he smiled and spoke softly in interviews, that he could be pushed around on camera without consequences. Those people were always wrong. Michael Jackson did not fight back the way most people do when provoked publicly. He did not raise his voice. He did not storm off set or send out angry statements through his publicist. What he did was something far more effective. He let the room do it for him. He let his talent do it for him. He let time do it for him. Over and over again, across 4 decades, the people who tried to diminish him on camera ended up looking smaller than they ever expected, while he remained exactly who he had always been. His reputation outlasted every attempt to damage it. His music kept reaching new audiences long after every controversy had faded. This is the story of those moments, the attempts to disrespect the king of pop on camera, and the reasons why every single one of them backfired. What makes these moments worth examining is not just the satisfaction of watching someone fail to bring him down. It is what they reveal about his character, about the kind of person who could absorb that level of public scrutiny and deliberate provocation across 4 consecutive decades and consistently come out on the other side with his dignity completely intact. When Thriller was released in late 1982, MTV was already a major cultural force. But the network had an unofficial policy that was impossible to ignore. It largely refused to air music videos by black artists. The public justifications varied, but the practical outcome was entirely consistent. Black artists were routinely excluded from a channel simultaneously positioning itself as the future of music discovery. When Michael Jackson's team submitted Billie Jean for airplay, MTV initially rejected it. CBS Records president Walter Yetnikoff reportedly responded by threatening to pull every single CBS artist from the network entirely. Given what that threat meant for the network's content library, MTV backed down and added the video. What happened next permanently ended any question of whether Michael Jackson belonged on that platform. Billie Jean entered heavy rotation and became one of the most watched videos in the network's early history. Beat It followed. Then came the 14-minute short film for Thriller, which MTV chose to air in full, repeatedly, at a scale they had never devoted to any single piece of content before. The network that tried to shut him out ended up building a significant part of its own legacy directly on his work. The executives who originally dismissed him never fully escaped the historical record of that decision. And Michael Jackson, who had said almost nothing publicly throughout the entire episode, had simply made music so undeniable that the people trying to keep it off their platform eventually ran out of any defensible reason to continue doing so. That pattern of letting the work speak when words would have been insufficient would repeat itself throughout his entire career, every single time someone decided to underestimate him.
I'm going to ask you this, and it's embarrassing for me to ask you this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Are you a virgin?
How could you ask me that question?
I just want to know. I want to know.
I'm a gentleman.
You're a gentleman.
I'm a gentleman.
So
I'm a gentleman.
So, okay, I would interpret that to mean that means that you believe that a lady is a lady, and therefore...
That's something that's private. I mean, you know, shouldn't be spoken about openly. You can call me old-fashioned if you want, but, you know, to me that's very personal.
So you're not going to answer it?
I'm embarrassed.
February 10th, 1993. Michael Jackson sat down with Oprah Winfrey at Neverland Ranch for what became one of the most watched television interviews in American history. More than 90 million people tuned in. Oprah was already the most trusted interviewer on television, and the expectation was that she would get answers from Michael Jackson that nobody had managed to get before. She got answers about his childhood, about his father, about his skin condition, and the years of speculation surrounding the visible changes in his appearance. She got more from him in that single sitting than most journalists had managed across years of attempting to cover him. But she also got something she had not entirely planned for, a moment that demonstrated, live in front of 90 million people, exactly how Michael Jackson handled it when someone pushed past the line he had decided to hold. When Oprah asked him directly about his virginity, the expectation was either an awkward deflection or uncomfortable oversharing. What they got was neither. He looked directly at her and told her calmly and without any visible anger, that this was a private matter, that it was between him and God, that some things were simply not for public discussion. And then he waited, without filling the silence. Oprah moved on. The moment passed. But the clip has stayed in circulation for decades because of what it demonstrated in real time. A man who was almost always accommodating in public had drawn a clear line in front of 90 million people and held it without raising his voice, without showing irritation, and without giving the moment any more dramatic energy than it deserved. That kind of composure under direct public pressure is genuinely rare. Very few people in the history of live television have managed it as naturally and as effectively as Michael Jackson did in that exchange. August 29, 2002. Michael Jackson's 44th birthday. The MTV Video Music Awards, one of the strangest and most debated moments in the entire history of that award show. Michael Jackson appeared on stage as part of what was framed as an Artist of the Millennium tribute. A birthday cake was wheeled out. Something that looked very much like a formal trophy was visibly present. Britney Spears, who had been given the role of introducing him, appeared visibly uncertain about what was supposed to happen next. And Michael Jackson, operating on what his team would later state was a genuine belief that he was receiving a real award, went into full acceptance speech mode. He thanked people. He was gracious and warm. And then it became clear to everyone watching that the Artist of the Millennium Award was not actually a real award that existed. Some outlets mocked Michael Jackson for what they framed as giving himself an award. But people who examined the actual sequence of events pointed out something important. Someone at the network designed that segment. Someone approved what would physically be on that stage. Someone made a specific decision about how that moment would be structured. And the person who ended up looking embarrassed on camera was not the one who had made any of those decisions. This was the same network that had tried to refuse to air Billie Jean 2 decades earlier. The relationship between Michael Jackson and MTV had never been straightforward. And this particular night left a mark on the network's reputation that was considerably more durable than anything it left on his. February 3, 2003. Living with Michael Jackson, a documentary by British journalist Martin Bashir, aired in the United Kingdom and then in the United States. It became one of the most watched television events of that entire year and generated enormous public discussion. Bashir had spent approximately 8 months with Michael Jackson. The resulting documentary was edited in a way that Michael Jackson, his representatives, numerous journalists, and ultimately a formal broadcast regulator, described as deliberately creating impressions the full context did not actually support. Specific moments were placed beside footage from completely different contexts to create associations the unedited record did not justify. Comments made while discussing one subject were repositioned to appear to relate to entirely different topics. Michael Jackson's response set a template others have since followed. Rather than simply issuing a denial, his team released their own complete counter-documentary. Take 2. The footage you were never meant to see, presenting many of the same scenes but restoring the surrounding context that Bashir's editing had removed. The effect of watching both versions was something that genuinely surprised many viewers. Moments that had been edited to suggest one set of impressions looked substantially different once the full footage was restored. Bashir was later formally criticized by Ofcom, the official British broadcast regulator, whose investigation found the documentary had breached specific privacy commitments made to Michael Jackson, and that the editing had created impressions unfair to the subject. The lesson remained the same every time. The camera could be pointed against him, but it could also be pointed right back. Across every single one of these moments, one pattern kept repeating itself with remarkable consistency. The attempts to disrespect Michael Jackson on camera did not age well. Not a single one of them aged well. The people who tried to dismiss him, to embarrass him, to frame him in ways that did not reflect the complete picture, did not end up looking like the powerful or authoritative ones when the full story eventually became clear. They ended up looking like people who had attempted to bring down someone much larger than the situations they had constructed around him. Michael Jackson rarely needed to defend himself loudly. His talent was his defense. His composure under provocation was his defense. The simple fact that the work existed was commercially and culturally undeniable and kept reaching new audiences long after any attempt to diminish him had faded. That was his most effective and most durable defense of all. He understood, perhaps better than almost anyone else of his era, that the most powerful thing you can do when someone tries to make you look small on camera is to simply remain exactly who you are. Keep doing the work that defines you. and let the permanent record build itself over time. And the record did build, across 4 decades, across every contested interview and every performance and every moment when someone decided they could get away with dismissing the king of pop on live camera. The record kept building, and it kept telling the same story. You do not disrespect Michael Jackson on camera, not because he will do something dramatic in response, but because the attempt itself becomes a permanent part of the record. And that record almost never ends in the direction the person who started it originally intended. Which of these moments surprised you most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because there is still so much more of this story worth telling.